Um, Hello, everybody. Great to see you. We've got another, the fourth edition of IATEFL Poland webinars. And today we've got very special guests, Grzegorz Śpiewak and Anna Sołtyska. And this is a follow-up webinar about assessment. And this is the follow-up of a discussion that has been started. And now we hope to have some more debates, some more discussion about assessment, online assessment, but also just testing, grading, or maybe ungrading at schools. Guys, before we start and before I introduce dear speakers, I would like to say a few things about IATEFL Poland anniversary. Today, not today, but this year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of IATEFL Poland, and we are so happy that you are with us. Let me briefly tell you what we are planning for today and for September. Namely, we are preparing the 30th conference of IATEFL Poland, international but virtual conference of IATEFL Poland, still virtual. We would love to see you face to face. We would like to meet you and have fun and discuss and probably sometimes have some discussions about to test or not.
And the beer, Marcin, let's face it, and the beer together.
Yeah, or champagne. And I'm looking forward to that, but not yet. The conference is going to happen on 17th and 18th September, and we've got very special guests there. First of all, the opening plenary will be delivered by Professor David Crystal, and this is a very important big thing for us. But also, we are going to have Alan Maley for the conference. And we are so fortunate because it was this fantastic trainer who actually initiated IATEFL Poland, who gave this spark to Polish teachers to start the association. So we are very happy to have him. And we are going to have the multitude of guests, almost 70 sessions, 2 days packed with a lot of training, a lot of workshops, a lot of lectures. But we're going to start on Friday morning with something very characteristic and something that IATEFL Poland is famous for, and that means the public speaking contest. Nobody does it in Poland, and for such a scale. And we've got the finals of the public speaking contest on Friday morning. And that was the contest that was being run from May up to late July, and now we've got the finals on Friday. So we are very happy to have it, to inspire young people well, speak publicly and to master their skills. But without much further ado, I would like to introduce fantastic speakers today. We've got Anna Sołtyska and Grzegorz Śpiewak. Anna is a teacher trainer and lecturer at University of Bochum. Yeah, am I right? Ruhr, and in Germany. And she's also the member of Teaching Evaluation Assessment Special Interest Group of IATEFL, International IATEFL. And we have also Grzegorz Śpiewak, who's Macmillan Senior ELT Consultant, but also ELT DOS owner and the person who inspires thousands of, or millions maybe, teachers,
billions
in Poland and around the world. And also it's quite important, Grzegorz Śpiewak was one of the presidents of IATEFL Poland, so this is also very important to us that we can today have this pleasure to listen to Grzegorz. Anyways, I would like to start with reminding you that the whole thing about assessment started with March webinar by Anna Sołtyska. And Anna, would you be so kind and remind us some basic things, what you were talking about assessment and cheating online in March 2021.
Yeah, thank you, Marcin, for this wonderful introduction. And it's a great honor for us both to open this with our debate this month of IATEFL Poland celebrations. So the lineup for your conference is incredible, and I wish it could be there with you. But of course, we'll try to tease you to join IATEFLers in September even more actively with our today's debate. But before I give you an overview of what I mentioned in March, Grzegorz and I decided to start with some caveats. The first one is about the word debate. We were actually we realized we were a bit naughty, if not thoughtless, to call it a debate, because it might make an impression we are going to disagree, or the two of us are going to discuss something that we have opposing views on. That's not actually the case. Grzegorz and I share a lot of, I would say, good ideas on assessment, and we'll exchange views on what fair assessment is, but it's mostly you that have the opportunity to discuss those assessment related concepts with us, who have the opportunity to ask us questions, to raise your objections, or to say, yes, but. So please do interact with us via chat box. Marcin will be kindly following your questions in the chat box. Grzegorz and I will probably not be able to do so much multitasking, but definitely if there is an interesting and relevant question to be forwarded to us, it will be the case. The second caveat is also about our roles. As you have heard, we are active, Grzegorz and I, we have been active in various roles, in various contexts, in teacher training context and university context. We realize that this is a very privileged position. Yeah, we realize that we are not, by all means, we are not representative of the majority of teachers, English teachers or language teachers in Poland, in the various schooling institutions, who have to cope with various limitations, very practical, very down-to-earth limitations, whose hands are tied by the system or by their headmasters' wishes and wants. So please bear in mind that whatever we say here is not ex cathedra, the theory have to follow, or you have to implement at whatever cost. But these are just some practical tips and ideas of Anna and Grzegorz. And of course, you are here to say what might work for you, what's relevant for your context, what's doable, and we strongly encourage you to take what's in there for you, for your school, for your testing and assessment context. So just to start with what you should know before you listen to our discussion. And as Martin encouraged, let me very briefly summarize what I said about cheating in language assessment context back in March. Of course, a lot has changed. We've gained some more experience in testing online, and our students, our learners, our test takers have definitely gained more experience in trying to trick out their teachers, their testers. So it's everything very much changing and a dynamic concept, both of testing online and also of cheating online, let's be honest. But what's important is that we make the most of this lesson that we are now going through, that we draw the right conclusions, and that we decide what battles to take, what battles to wage, and do not invest our effort and time into wrong practices. So the first thing I mentioned was about reducing pressure. Cheating comes because of the pressure that students, that test takers feel on them. And very often it's up to us how much tension, how much pressure is there in an assessment context. I suggested using some mock exams. I suggested we make assessment not a single event, end of course or end of semester test, but rather go towards more continuous assessment, go towards many small portions, many small assessment events, because then it's not worth cheating so much, or one would need to cheat on every single assessment event. Also, the way to release this tension is to offer more consultancy, to offer more counseling, and to be more transparent in the way in which our assessment practices are organized on the one hand, and in the way these assessment procedures are announced. And it means that we should establish some rules, we should announce those rules, and we should try, by no means, we should try to make everyone play by the rules. And those rules also include what counts as cheating and what punishment is there for someone who gets caught red-handed. Yeah? It's absolutely vital our learners, our test takers are aware of the rules of assessment, and we as teachers do our best to enforce them. We know from various social contexts that sometimes efficient law enforcement can act as a deterrent, and in our case, sometimes it could reduce cheating. This brings me to the topic of awareness. We should pay attention to raising awareness of assessment purposes, of the purposes of our assessment practices among all the stakeholders. And by all stakeholders, I also mean parents. There was, I remember from the chat box discussion in March, there were several voices of teachers being really angry with their learners' parents getting involved, obviously too much involved in assessment processes, procedures. Yeah, we should make parents of our learners aware of the purpose of assessment, of the meaning and of the goal of assessment. And this awareness raising job might or should make us think about the purpose of assessment. Is it really to test to get a grade, test to award points, or is it rather a learning-oriented assessment that we, not only in this online phase, not only in this online learning scenario, should rather be moving towards? There are two more concepts, just to finish. One more is inclusion. To have assessment, to have a fair assessment, we need to ensure that it is inclusive. And Until recently, very often inclusive assessment focused very much on people, on students, on learners with the various kinds of disabilities or dysfunctions. But these days, in online contexts, inclusive assessment leaves no child behind because of no internet connection, because of unstable, unreliable equipment, because of lack of digital skills. We need to make sure that no one is left behind per se when our assessment procedures are created. And this brings me to my last point, namely validity. There is no discussion about fairness without mentioning the concept of a valid test, which tests what it is supposed, which measures what it is supposed to measure, so which tests what it is supposed to test. In our concept of anti-cheating assessment, the question would be, does my test measure what it is supposed to measure? Or does it measure what the students are able to cheat on, what the students are able to produce in a more or less legal way? Yeah? We have to make sure, and this reflection should be the starting point of any assessment design process. We need to make sure that the goals that we are pursuing, together with the methods that we employ to achieve those goals, and the measurement instruments, the assessment procedures that we implement to make sure the goals have been attained, that they all three go hand in hand in line with the so-called constructive alignment by Biggs and Tangs. And we have to admit that in online learning, many of our goals have changed, many of our methods have changed, and so should have changed our assessment as well. Grzegorz, would you add anything to that, or would you ask questions? I know you've got a lot to show us and to tell us. The floor is yours.
Well, thanks for this intro, and again, thank you, IATEFL, for creating this space for the two of us. I have to say that I feel like I must have been too naughty during your original webinar, and that's my punishment. That is, IATEFL, meaning Lucyna and Marcin were kind enough to get to me after your session and suggest that we perhaps continue this in some form. So I feel like I've been sort of, that I was taken to task, and here I am. So what I would like to say, with all the caveats that Anya gave at the very beginning, that while we are essentially not opposed, I do have something that I would like to bring into this evening, which I hope will sparkle a little spirit of debates. And I agree 100% with Anya that we would very much like this not to be a sort of one-way traffic between the two of us only, but rather, if possible, a multi-directional traffic involving everybody present, both here and on Facebook. I understand we are being streamed on Facebook as well. So if there's anything either here or there, I hope Marcin will pick it up and we'll be able to bring it to our attention so that we can respond. So now to pass on to my little take on these things. One thing that I noticed originally, and that made me a little worried when Anya gave her original webinar in the spring, and in a sense it got reiterated today, is a certain number of terms which of course are perfectly justified in the science of assessment. However, they make me wonder, as a teacher and teacher trainer in the field of foreign language teaching and assessing. And the terms that I have in mind include the original sort of title term, cheating. So my question is, how is this term applicable, and to what extent, to the reality of teaching a foreign language and then assessing an ability which is a communicative ability, or so we believe, I think, ever since sort of, COT started back in the 70s. And of course, along with the term cheating come a number of others, such as validity, fairness, playing by the rules. I'm sort of picking on some of the things that Anya used today. Being caught red-handed, legal, illegal, and the like. And what I would like to bring to your attention and kind of invite you to think about is how applicable are these to assessing a communicative ability. And perhaps to up this even further, I would now like to show you a few authentic, unedited quotes from fairly recent ones, recent, but at the time of cheating. So let's say around the time when Anya gave her original webinar, I scrolled some of our Polish teachers groups and I found certain rather typical pronouncements and reactions to other statements, which I think might bear on what we are debating tonight. So with your permission, I will switch to some of these slides at the moment to show you a few which I think are quite representative. Here is the first one, which I think is quite characteristic and telling. And please note 180 comments to this within only 2 days, which shows that this indeed is a burning issue. So again, I am by no means sort of dismissing the validity of the concerns, right? But for the benefit of non-Polish speaking colleagues, this one says, I've given them a quiz, a vocabulary quiz on test portal, and they got straight A's, basically, 5s and 6s only, which are, the 2 top marks in the Polish system. So how do you assess students' knowledge online? This was the question posed by the teacher, and now some of those answers. Of course, I've anonymized them all. So I'm not picking on any particular person, with their name. So all I want you to look at is the spirit from within which those are made. The one at the top says there's a sort of an outburst of tutorials on YouTube on how to cheat test portal, Quizlet, and others. Another one on the left-hand side, how does one get a 5 or a 6 without studying? The one on the bottom left, seriously, you open a course book, a textbook, and you simply write your tests, using the course book, and you get your 6. No need to study, no need to know anything, no vocabulary knowledge necessary. You just copy what you have got. The one on the right-hand side is they basically cheat left, right, and center. And last but not least, the one which really sort of, went deep with me was this one. This is why one needs to set various limitations when doing an online quiz, such as, for instance, setting a time limit on their answers, or disallowing, Anya can help me, disallowing them to go back to an earlier answer, right? Yeah, making it impossible for them to go back to an earlier answer. And, with all of this, I wonder how you feel. Again, I'm inviting, on behalf of Anya and myself, I'm inviting you all honestly to comment in the chat, or if you want, come out with your video stream and talk to us. But to me, this is symptomatic of a problem, of a genuine problem, which is that if one takes this English expression, pick your battles, this is in a sense picking the wrong one. That's what I would like to suggest, right? It's capitalizing on things which, if they matter, something that we put in the title of this debate. If they matter, they certainly should not matter the most. Or if anything, the sequence is wrong. You know, what I think is massively missing in those reactions is a fundamental relationship of trust and support between the two parties. And you know, when we did our little warm-up today, Marcin said something very, very telling, I think. He said that those are, in a sense, symptomatic of a certain sort of old-fashioned game that is part of especially public education, which is a cheating game. You know, who can outsmart whom? And you know, what I want to say is that perhaps sadly, or perhaps not sadly, we as a profession are losing massively at this game, particularly in the time of online. And I say sadly or not sadly because again, in a sense, one could say that what the online trauma of assessment, traditional assessment, has brought to the fore is everything that was wrong with traditional testing for a long, long time, except it wasn't perhaps as visible because it happened behind everybody's closed classroom doors, whereas suddenly it became everybody's business. And of course, it also became the parents' business a lot more because very often they were behind the students' back for various reasons, And you know, one extra thing before I let somebody else say something, and especially Anya to respond, but is that you know, when I looked at what went on for those months of online testing, it struck me that in a sense, those cases of so-called cheating were at one level nothing if not cases of something that we had been, in a sense, calling for several years before the pandemic, which is those 21st century skills, including the skill of collaboration. So there you have it. They started collaborating with one another. Of course, not in ways that we, in a sense, had expected them to, but, well, you know, they were given a certain type of task which was fundamentally unsuited to the reality of multiple screens and multiple channels of communication that were suddenly became available to those students. And we started lamenting that they took advantage of them. So whose problem is this? Is this the problem of the student cheating, or is the problem of education simply failing massively to adjust to a reality which exposes the deficiencies of traditional closed tests? Let me stop here for the time being, and you know.
Yeah, while we are waiting for other comments to come to reach us via chat box, let me take on this military language that you use when saying that we need to pick the right battles. It is indeed like a battle of arms. Yeah, how do you call it? The kind of a competition, who is better armed, we or our students. And obviously, when it comes to new tools, when it comes to the familiarity and digital acuity, when it comes to using tools that we as older generations, and I count myself old already, we have never heard of, and our students know everything, know their functionalities, we will never be ahead. Whichever new method of cheating is invested in, is first of all invented and then discovered, another one will be invented tomorrow. So this is definitely not the right attitude to focus on combating, another military metaphor, combating cheaters, but rather on, as Małgorzata is writing, on this attitude shift. Show me what you know, instead of I will prove you what you don't know much. Yeah, so we can kill two birds with one stone. We can move away from focusing too much on cheating, and we can move towards a more goal-oriented, learning-oriented assessment. Marcin, you're waving.
Yeah. Because what you have said at the beginning struck me as quite important, because you use such words as play by the rules or discipline. And I'm wondering if these things that you have spoken of aren't the reason why it backfires, because young people simply try to rebel, try to either go around the rules, and they don't want to play by the rules. And actually the only, maybe I'm too idealistic, but maybe the only way is simply not to assess. I don't know. What you mean in this traditional sense, right? That's I like this metaphor a lot. That the flower doesn't grow because of the fact that it's being measured all the time and assessed and taken photos of, right? So maybe this is just enough to be with students and inspire them and infect them with enthusiasm for learning. Of course, I'm a little bit provocative in this thing, but what would you say to that?
I would say that's a very bold suggestion, and I'm afraid we are not that far yet. But you have to dream high, you have to aim high, and maybe with some small steps, with moving away from this traditional role of assessment as disciplinary measure. That's terrible. I remember some of the participants of the discussion last time saying that tests are being set as a punishment, or that having too high an average grade on a test, as in Grzegorz example, is just the proof of students having cheated. So as a punishment, another test needs to be far more difficult, yeah, just to show them. So let's move away of this this view or this perception of assessment for sure. This is nothing to stick to in a long term. I would say we shouldn't have stick to that in the past at all, but what happened. But let's move towards taking for granted that whatever options students have at their disposal, be it DeepL, be it Google Translate, be it Grammarly or any other test optimizing tools, like in the past, having a dictionary, having a set of vocabulary cards, these tools are there, and we cannot assume students are not taking advantage of them. So let's create our assessment tasks in a way which assume that help is being used. And it's, as Grzegorz said, these are those higher order skills. These are those 21st century skills that they need to show in their production, in their written or spoken production, in their submissions. And this is something even very, very clever AI can't help them deliver. They will have to think on their own. Yeah, so let's make them think. And the job of checking their punctuation, checking their spelling, even working on the synonyms, let the tools do it for them. Yeah, Grzegorz?
I mean, of course, not in any way undermining what you've just said. I've been looking at the chat, and Piotr, amongst others, said one thing which I would like to comment on, and that is that no teacher wants their students to fail. Well, I'm not so sure, to be perfectly honest with you, Piotr. And, you know, we are amongst friends, I hope, so we can be perfectly honest and open. You know, I was a student once, and so were you. And I think it's fair to say that almost everybody, if not virtually everybody, who has ever been a student through education met somebody whose attitude was at least questionable. if not, you know, purely unacceptable. And I think that there is still quite a bit of that. And this whole idea of lamenting cheating is, again, to me, is in a sense part of that. To, you know, lift another quote, Lucyna commented only a couple of minutes ago with the sentence, "We suffer when students cheat." Well, let's kind of, let's sort of put, you know, look at this again, Lucyna. You suffer when your students cheat. Why do your students cheat? You know, my question, and I think something which is a hard one for any teacher, is to really kind of do a bit of soul searching and saying, why is it necessarily their fault that they cheat? You know, if we even use that term, and what does it mean that they cheat? You know, if we are very specific about it, what do we describe as cheating? Because I mean, okay, so you give them a test, right? And they cheat when they do what? When they ask each other for help, when they ask a parent for help, when they consult a book for help. When do they cheat? All of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but why is consulting another student wrong?
Because everybody is to show their brain, yes, the contents of their brain in a test, any kind of test. Yes, they are expected to show how much they know about the subject and what they can, and the way they would reflect on the subject, but not with their colleagues. There was a chance to talk with colleagues, a lot of discussion, yes, a lot of sharing, a lot of synergy effects. But during the test, you are on your own. Yes, that's the idea.
But that's whose idea, Lucyna? That's precisely
our idea, yes, because we are testing this particular person. We are not taking, we are not testing their ability to cooperate with their colleagues, yes, and get creative ideas. So collective work, teamwork, team spirit, and so on. Because during the test, you don't test it. You test it during project work, yes? Like in my classes, there are a lot of projects. And then we concentrate on collaboration, team spirit, and so on.
I get that, yeah, of course there are other...
But here in the test, if the rules for the test are set by the teacher in such a way that they are supposed to be following the rules, like one of our colleagues wrote in the comments, cameras and mics on, limiting the time, shuffling the questions as the rules for online testing. Yes, these are some of the good practices that we already have in our emploi, yes, that we have after online teaching period. Yes, so that's why I wrote in some of my comments about the idea of communities of practice, yes, and sharing some of good practices to reach the standard faster, yes, because we are aiming at standards. Yes, the standard is that everybody in a test like this, everybody is supposed to be working on their own. That's my idea.
Well, that's precisely what I would like to debate, Lucyna. That's precisely what I would like to debate. Mm-hmm. Are we doing the right thing in the language teaching specifically when we are aiming at the same standard from everybody, when we are inviting them to only report on what their own single brain has got, where the whole world out there is connected up and information is connected up, and outside the language classroom, or outside, specifically outside this artificial testing condition, they are being invited left, right, and center to share everything. And an ability to share is amongst the greatest skills that they are supposed to be developing if they are to be successful citizens, workers, students, even in higher education. So everywhere it is important, except for a situation in which we artificially created and we are setting those rules without consulting them. That's what Marcin said. We are just imposing those rules and we are expecting them to obey those rules because we gave them. And that's precisely what I'd like us to think about. Is it really not in stark contrast to everything else that they are doing in life? And is it not that the so-called cheating is simply students reporting back to us that they understand the concept of collaboration, except it's not going the way that we would like it to go? So perhaps the right response is not to insist on more rules in traditional testing, but to fundamentally rethink the way that we give them a chance to report on what they've learned. Okay.
I would like to butt in for a moment right now. I used to participate in the so-called one semester of European studies. That was some time ago, and we had tests the way you try to redefine testing right now. That we were in the classroom, we brought the knowledge into the classroom, and we were allowed to use all kinds of resources. So this option also exists, but the question is how to bring it into language classroom, where you have vocabulary. Yes, or are we going, on the other hand, are we going to test active language, or are we going to test vocabulary, which you can check during tests if you implemented your options, the ones that you've been just discussing. So this idea of testing exists, but how does it relate to a language classroom? Marcin wants to say something.
Yeah, if I may, because you asked the question, how to do it. Yeah, that's Piotr has written what I wanted to say. It's open book exam, it's open book tests, and it both tests the language and the ability to use the resources. And basically, what our students are doing right away, and what I'm doing right away, like learning anything, I'm using the resources. If I don't know how to set up the server, I simply go to YouTube and I use someone's knowledge, right? And this is like with open book. And this is what I do from time to time with my students. It's simply, okay, guys, you've got everything. Or you write a test, but in pairs, right? And you can share, and it's okay. And I just want to kind of express one thing, which I believe is quite important in this part. There's this Polish neuroscientist, Dr. Marek Kaczmarzyk, right? And he's got his brilliant lecture where he claims that humanity evolved for the big part of humanity in groups of 100 people or so. And if we think of anything that we have learned from the public school, we could remember around 10 to 20%. But once we get in team, in a collective, in a group, we can do a lot more than just on our own. And this is, I would say, biological or maybe a scientific ground on I mean that we are now coming back to. I mean, we should promote this feeling of resourcefulness, of working together, right? That's what I believe.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with you, Marcin. Actually, it's now called not an open book exam, but open web exam, whereas it should be open world, because as Grzegorz said, there is nothing wrong about collaborating with other humans instead of using some digital tools. Yeah, and I just wanted to support with some quotes. They say that there are 3 principles of secure testing, which were by the way, originally formulated back in exam halls times, yeah, so before the digital era. You need to know who your test taker is, so you need to verify their identity before you let them in to the room. You need to see what they are doing, so you need to have proper invigilation and proctors moving around the exam halls, saying hush hush, and reacting to hands up if there is a question. And you need to know what tools they are using while completing their test. So basically they are using that test sheet and a pencil or a pen, and that's it, what used to be allowed. These days with digital assessment, let's be honest, in most cases we have no certainty who is actually taking the test, even if we see them via a webcam, even if we are online proctoring them. We have little to no knowledge about what they are doing, and we have even less knowledge about which tools they are using. Even if we go for safe exam browsers, we can't be sure there are other devices somewhere in the room. Yeah, even if we ask them to show us they are surrounding the room behind them, how can be sure for sure? And if we really want to be sure, we have to pay a lot of money. There are companies that offer such services against fee, but I doubt any of the educational institutions can afford them. Yeah, so
but they shouldn't.
It's the wrong battle.
They shouldn't.
That's no point, right, in paying that.
I can imagine the need for this sort of high stake armory, put it that way, to use your military. Yeah, but only in a situation where it is a absolutely high stake competency exam, right? I mean, this completely does not apply to 99.9% of situations where an individual teacher wishes to find out about whether they've learned the last 15 words successfully, and I think this is what's fundamentally wrong with this, Lucyna. And I mean, not to make you feel bad or anything, but I mean, I'm just saying that a traditional test has run its course. A traditional closed test, where everybody is doing the same 10, 15, 20 closed multiple choice items or fill in the gaps items, has simply run its course. It has no place. It should be buried.
That's what I was trying to say. I don't give my students traditional tests. The only section in my test is vocabulary that is traditional, and then they are to reflect on a range of ideas.
But even with vocabulary, okay, so you can give them 5 items so that they understand the structure of a test task. But then the real test should be, for instance, add 5 items of your own to this, right? Or design, as Martin suggested.
I give them the task of express your ideas with the use, yes?
I mean, Lucyna, I'm sticking to something which is actually quite close to the original vocabulary quiz format, okay? I don't even need to make it communicative yet. Using this very format, right? I would say to them, okay, so here is a sample task. Your real task is not to answer those 5 items, because I know that you can easily check them everywhere. Your task is to design 5 similar items individually. And what I would like is 5 different items from each of the students in the group. So if you have 10 students, you are getting 50 different items back, items that they need to design. And yes, please go over your last unit and find good examples that you will select. Because notice, essentially what we would be doing with a task like this is we would not be really testing them. We would be giving them another opportunity to revise. And that is the whole thing. That at the end of the day, the right mindset of a language teacher is to use what we used to call testing formats to encourage extra rounds of revision. And if we are able to encourage them to do that, then I think we have already done our job. And in a sense, we don't need to test them at all. So in that sense, Marcin is right. Even though it sounds really far-fetched, perhaps, and dreamy, and, you know, so do everything using a twist on the original test formats so that they revise. And once they've revised, you can tell them, okay, now if you want, you can compare the 5 items, and perhaps you can test each other and see if your colleagues can answer the questions that you set yourselves, right? But I'm not grading you. I don't need to. See, another thing which I would encourage us to think about, and by encouraging to think, I really don't mean that I am decreeing that that's the way it should be, but at least giving the space that perhaps time has also come to stop grading, or at least reduce the number of times that students get any sort of, you know, tangible grades at all to the absolute minimum.
I think.
How about their sense of achievement? They have to be somehow, if not grading, then at least feedback. Yes, ongoing feedback all the time. That's what we have to implement in our teaching process.
By all means, but I mean, ongoing feedback is very different from ongoing summative assessment. You know,
yes,
and also,
yes,
you know,
of course.
If they need the test, and if they communicate a need for tests because they want to feel a sense of achievement, I don't see how they are going to then cheat. You need, again, so it's a question of how we set that dialogue, right? You know, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to give you various tasks that will allow you to diagnose your progress? Fine, I will. I have plenty of those, you know, but you tell me what you want first, and then I will give it to you, rather than me imposing it on you and then complaining that you are not happy.
One question, are you totally against summative assessment? Would you just concentrate on formative assessment?
No, I am against.
Yes, that sounded this way.
I am against most coercive instruments that go with summative assessment. Okay,
I see.
I am massively in and massively for ongoing low-stake summative assessment. Okay,
I see.
And one area where I think this works very well is all kinds of online supporting tools. You know, if you have, including those that accompany standard course books, you know, if you get a student's app with hundreds of exercises on it, I mean, let them cheat as much as they please. I mean, if they cheat and still do 500 exercises, I'm happy because somebody will do that work, you know. So if not Marysia, then Wojtek, who's cheated for Marysia, will have learned, you know. So I'm not too flustered, okay? But I mean, there are so many short, punctual, low-stake summative assessment moments that that does the trick. What I am against is high-stake, coercive summative assessment. In language teaching.
I do agree with you, but I have to come in here, and I think I have to speak on behalf of many of our listeners.
We are debating.
It's not always possible, and very often it's a long-term process, which is not a bottom-up one, but needs to start somewhere, at least at the director of studies room, if not at a ministry level. Yeah, so not grading, or grading less often, grading on different in a different framework is the right approach to take on, but not an easy one to push through and
but you know what? But I know for a fact that actually within the Polish legal system, at least, it is entirely up to individual. I'm talking state system, of course, right? It is entirely up to individual groups of teachers within a school, at you know, a specific school, to decide on the grading policy.
Okay, yeah, so context
Okay,
do
so
differ.
again, when we talk top down, it's very easy to sort of push this discussion away by saying, well, it's not up to me at all, but actually it is. The so-called szkolny system oceniania, school internal grading system is something which is completely at the discretion of an individual group of teachers within a school.
Right, so the homework for everyone here, make sure how much you can do on your own or where you can start if you want to change your assessment procedures. But before we finish, I wanted to get back to the topic of, or to the title of our debate, namely fair assessment. And I think there is one more aspect we have to mention, namely that fairness can only be based on a mutual relationship. And in this context, we need to discuss assessment with as many stakeholders as possible. First of all, we as teachers, we should not treat it as a solitary job. We always need to share, to speak our mind. We need to talk to our fellow teachers. We need to talk to teachers of our subjects. We need to talk to our colleagues and maybe within communities of practice, maybe within teachers associations. Don't do it on your own. Otherwise it's biased, or it's likely to be biased. It's likely to be subjective, and it's likely to be, I don't want to say narrow-minded, but in a way it might be a reflection of your current approaches and beliefs. So assessment needs to be done in a collaborative way. And I would also, having heard or having said so much about students being involved in shaping or co-shaping assessment, I would say fair assessment is what comes out of a collaboration of teachers and students. And if it's their own, or if they own this assessment, they will be less likely to cheat on that. Because let's leave those legal metaphors aside, but let's hope that if they co-author the tasks, if they co-author assessment criteria, we haven't mentioned that, but assessment criteria is another field to revise and rethink. Then they will hopefully not see a point in tricking out the authors, because they are the authors themselves.
Yeah,
one thing I would like to say right now, because we asked the participants to put their comments in the chat box, and there are a lot of very interesting, very inspiring comments, like the ones about skills assessment. Yes, we don't concentrate on knowledge, we concentrate on skills and social competences. If you would be so kind as to just comment on these reflections in the chat box, would it be possible? I can read them for you if you want.
Well, one thing that I noticed recently from Agnieszka is a comment about a final end of school numerical grade, and I don't quite see how it contradicts what we've been talking about, Agnieszka. What I said is that there is pressing need to, in my view anyway, to reduce the number of high-stake semester internal assessments, because that's what ruins the relationship between the teacher and the student. And this is what makes them play that game that Anya was talking about and Marcin before the session. Who outsmarts whom? I'm not against demolishing the schools. I've said this wrong. I'm not advocating demolishing of the entire school system here, right? And I am aware, of course, that once in a while they need to be given a semester final or school year final numerical grades. But this does not mean that the relationship that we are building with them throughout the school year must be based almost exclusively on this dance of, I make one step forward, you make one step forward. And I think that's where a lot can be done, and that's where school internal decisions can be made in favor of something which will help, genuinely help everybody. Because notice, I am not here as an advocate of the students only. I am here to say that if we rethink this, our lives will be easier. In a sense, instead of investing all that energy into securing reliability, stopping cheating, etc., we will be building relationship of trust, and based on that, we will be building our ground for assessing everything in language teaching. As regards skills, where when it comes to assessing skills, the problem is of itself reduced. Because the only way to assess skills is to let them have individual say, right? If you have space to assess speaking and you let them do individual recordings, for instance, even in very small ones, right? Then, unless you don't know your students' voices, then the problem of cheating disappears automatically, right? Because you simply get your own students talking at you. And again, I mean, this whole idea of students recording themselves and sending the recording, again, you can set it up in various ways. One simple trick is to tell them, look, I want you to record and re-record as many times as you please until you're happy with the result. And you send me your best result. And notice again, I mean, what I'm really telling them is, I want you to revise as many times as you possibly can and want. And then, if anything, give me the best result that you can possibly produce. And that's the one that I'm going to grade within the realities of the system within which I am working. Okay? And the same would go for writing. If you produce a piece of writing, then one thing that I think is an absolute must, no matter what kind of criteria you may set in advance, once they produce the pieces, I would treat them as draft one only. And I would give them the feedback on the pieces without grading, so that they have a chance at least to produce a second draft. And it's only the second draft that I would take into consideration as material for grading. Okay?
And just to quote from Facebook chat, something that probably Marcin has just posted in our chat, in professional life, we are also tested for how well we do our job. So it is authentic to be evaluated. It is authentic to be tested. And also we as teachers, let's be honest, we are being evaluated by many stakeholders and in different contexts at any occasion, when we are speaking in public, when we are teaching, when we are defending our assessment decision. So this is just part of the job. And to once again quote the title of this event today, we need to do it in the most in the way which is as fair as possible for everyone concerned.
That's an excellent conclusion from the debate. You have so many fascinating ideas that maybe at this point I would suggest continuing this series. What do you think about it?
We'll see.
We'll see. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because I have this feeling that you haven't managed to express yourselves 100%. Yes, that there is so much to be said, and that there are so many aspects related directly or more indirectly to grading process, that you just had to limit yourselves. Yes, like the whole surrounding should also be discussed, because it influences the core subject. Yes, in my opinion, at least. So, Marcin, over to you. I will just mute myself right now.
I would like you, Anna, and Grzegorz to have just one or well, maximum 3-4 sentences of like recap and the final opinion on the topic. and try to be specific, answering the question how to make assessment fair, just as if you were telling that to a classroom teacher, like golden rules, two pieces of advice that anyone could introduce straight away yesterday at school.
You expect too much of us at this unearthly hour, Marcin.
Yeah.
But I would say to make
before we address Marcin's tall order, could I just say that I've just noticed, and apologies for not being able to follow the chat and talk and reflect at the same time. Multitasking is a myth, but I just noticed an absolutely beautiful quote from Marek Tkaczyk, who says, "My personal opinion, the fundamental question is, what is the purpose of testing? Because if it is marking, then it's got nothing to do with real learning." And then he goes on to say, but I think that to me really says it just about. Because I mean, this introduces this fundamental issue of do we ultimately want to give them the tests because we want to pick that individual brain and report on it and be the judges of what they know at any given point, as if it mattered that they know the 15 words on Tuesday, December the 7th. Or do we want to create space for them using all the tools that we have got, including traditional assessment formats, create space for them to revise and get better with every single attempt? And if the latter, then I think we are going a long way towards what it could be. Mm-hmm. So that's my little imagine for the evening, if you like. And I'm not sure whether it's practical enough, but that would be my conclusion now. And I'll hand over to Anya. Maybe Anya, you'll pick on something else that somebody, because I mean, there have been so many wonderful things along the way that I will definitely need. Are we recording this, by the way?
Yeah, I wasn't able to follow the chat either. The screen of my laptop is too small for everything. But as a cheating person here, or as a cheating expert, I need to say, yes, cheating is there, but focusing too much on preventing it or on combating it is not the right way to follow. And it's not the way we should reshape our assessment. There are more fundamental questions we need to ask ourselves. And if we create our assessment procedures in this new context, then cheating will hopefully be reduced as a byproduct as well. And as I said, collaboration is key. Changing or checking the approaches, checking the purposes and possible shapes of assessment procedures is what would come to my mind first if someone asked me, well, so what about cheating? How to reduce it? Well, no, do not start with cheating first.
And my final sort of recommendation, if absolutely needed, is again, going back to this problem of assessing the productive skills, catch them being good, right? Give them a chance to show you the best behavior, and that's what you notice, okay? So kind of train yourselves to notice moments when they do things right, rather than moments when they do things wrongly. We are the adults and the professionals, so we should have that ability to, if you like, allow them to make those little mistakes. Let's face it, little mistakes, right? And rather than capitalizing on them, yes, that's the human dimension. Thank you, Marcin. A very good illustration. Yeah. So rather than capitalizing on those mistakes, let's capitalize on moments where they have cooperated, where they have done something good, applaudable even, and even when they fail, as the late Paul Davies once said, it's not a question of whether you fail or not in along on the journey of learning something as complex as a foreign language, right? It's the question of failing now and then failing better. So fail again and fail better. And if we are true language instructors, then we will help them make a better next attempt. And that's all that there's to it, really. And let this be the final thing from me for tonight.
Anna Sołtyska, Grzegorz Śpiewak, and Lucyna Wilinkiewicz-Górniak. What a beautiful discussion it was. It wasn't a debate. It was a discussion of 4 people of different backgrounds, and also of our other participants here. Everybody represented some other educational background, but we have finally, I guess, agreed that this human dimension, working together, giving each other chance, trying to be better is the essential thing in assessment. And I would like to thank you a lot for this fantastic webinar, because it gives us a great introduction to our 30th conference, which motto is the human dimension. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. It was really very fruitful discussion. Have a good.
Thank you. Thanks, IATEFL, for giving us the opportunity.
Have a good night, and well, see you soon.
See you soon. Yes, the sooner the better.
Well, I'll be there with assessments.
See you at the conference in the meantime.
Pity, Anya, you can't be there as a lecturer.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyways, dear participants, thank you for being here with us in Zoom room, but also on Facebook. You will see this webinar on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. And please don't forget that you can still register for the 30th conference. Go to iatefl.org.pl and you can still
Join us.
Join us and register. Thank you very much, and good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.